Alright, let's jump right into this one. You see I have my notes handy, and I took my inspiration from the interweb and I combined what I thought were the best approaches for different aspects. And I'm going to hit on each one of those as we come to them. But let's start with these rails. So I got a 10-foot piece of electrical conduit, and using my pipe cutter, all I did was cut it in two 5-foot sections. It's like doing a pool cue, man. Hey-oh! Yeah, so now we got our two pieces. What's up? It's not really happened to be, perfect, because you're going to see that later. There's some trial and error involved. So here's trial number one. And my idea here was that I was going to have this piece of angle that was a scrap piece from my plastic press build. If you haven't seen that, if you could do so, that would really help me out. But I was going to have it slide on those rails with some bearings. So I needed to create like a track. So what I was thinking about doing was I would drill out some holes, and then I would have a spacer in between the two rails, so that there's it minimizes deflection and stuff like that. Plus you need something for it to mount to. And so you're going to see the culprit for the driving mechanism right behind that drill. That's an asynchronous motor. And that was from a microwave salvage. And I also have a video about that. If you haven't checked out my grinder from Salvage Parts from a Microwave, then please do so. That would also help me out. But I got my bandsaw here, which, spoiler alert, I also have a video on. And we're going to go through and just make a little spacer for both sides so that it could ride smoothly. We don't want it to be riding dirty, you know what I'm saying? So there we go. We just do the insertion right there, a little rod in there, boom. Stick rod B in there, in the slot. Secure it with a wing nut. That way it's easily accessible. We don't have to be messing around with like tools and stuff like that later on. So as this coming to fruition, this is trial and error, right? And so here's the error situation here, is that I didn't anticipate the screws, the bolts, not, hitting each other, but they are, so that's terrible. There's a lot more math and engineering involved, and just using what I had on hand, those bearings, I didn't want to go out and just buy new stuff, so I scrapped that idea. Hence trial number two. So I figured instead of using angle iron, I would just put the rail on an angle and let gravity do the work. So I got this block, and I figured I could attach some mounting thing or something to hold my camera, you know what I mean? And then just have it slide down, but it's inconsistent, it's choppy, it's gonna make for bad footage. And it takes forever, clearly. I mean, this is a 4 times speed, and it's still, it's terrible. And I'm getting bored too, so let's move on. Let's move past it and learn from this mistake. Boing! So I'm going to say goodbye gravity thing, go back to motorized, and using this conduit, I was like, you know what? These little spacer things, these wooden spacers, they're going to introduce some variability that I don't like. Boom, get rid of them. So I went out and I got me this PVC. I also got some conduit hangers, which I didn't even realize conduit hangers were a thing, but I'm not an electrician, so go figure. So I replaced that wooden spacer with this, and boom, magic. I have these wooden blocks for them to mount to. So I'm still going to go with this metal conduit. And my original idea was to use PVC as the conduit rail, but then I was like, you know what, it's 4 times cheaper, but it's also not as rigid as the metal. So I learned that the PVC could ride on the metal conduit itself, because the diameters are different, right? So I'm going to have the PVC ride this rail just like a CNC would. And I figured, you have X and Y axes, so why not use this type of situation for what I want to do as a camera slider. Boom, see, it's sliding pretty well, so that's where it all well and good.
Exploration, experimentation, exploration, exclamation.
So I'm going to secure this in place with a little block of wood with just some epoxy, some 2-part epoxy. And I'm going to have that cure overnight. And as I always like to do is, put the goo on, slap it onto the bing bong. That way when it's dry, it's dry. And so weigh it down and just make sure that it makes good contact. Got to use the little chompy guys. Use the chompy guy. That's for some, great weight. And then, whee, it's morning. So chompies wake up, get rid of that little metal piece, boom, 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 and it slides. Perfecto. But there's always room for improvement, so I'm going to add these little felt inserts on the inside of the PVC after I sand it down a little bit. These railings, they have like impressions and markings and stuff on them, so I just want to make them a little bit more smooth. And in order to get my quote-unquote cable on there, I can't, because the stapler doesn't fit. So at an angle, clunk, I just drive it into my workbench and then boom, secure it with some open-ended wrench action. And then also whenever you're putting this thing on, make sure you do it the correct way, because you're going to have the slide one direction and you're going to have the mount on the other direction, just like that. So now that I have the cable, the rail, the mount, and the motor, we're ready to go for a trial run. So I'll plug this guy in, and this asynchronous motor itself runs at 3 RPM. I later upgraded it to a different asynchronous motor from a microwave at 6 RPM, and there's my little choppy dude, so we're gonna do some trials. Hey, looking good, bud. But let's do another run real quick. Okay, we're rolling, homie. Oh no, it's a tidal wave. So if you know what that quote is from, leave it down in the comments because I'll give you some extra props for knowing where that is. But anyways, we're doing the trial with this 6 RPM motor. This is 16 times speed, and you can see that it still snags because I didn't have anything to secure the cable from slipping off of the top. And so it looks cool, but there's still some room for improvement. So what I'm thinking immediately is that it needs like a wider knob on top, just so it'll have some room for it to spool up. And that way it can wind appropriately. Boom. All right, so there you go. Is it the prettiest thing I've ever done? No, but is it functional? Heck yeah. And are people gonna see it? No, it should be behind the scenes anyways, right? So let me get you a closer look and how I troubleshot some of the snagging points that I had in order to get this guy to run real smooth. All right, so first thing is I had to change out this motor. This one is 6 RPM. The new one is 35. I don't even know how I acquired this. I mean, obviously it must have been from a microwave, but for one so quick, I'm not really sure what that's used for, but it doesn't matter. I have it and it works. So I Velcroed the little wonky do right here, so this could look down more of at an angle, which is kind of nice. It'll help in the long run, but for right now, it's just kind of like a Band-Aid. The snagging part where the wire was, it just kept endlessly looping. I had to put this mushroom on top. And then this shaft for the new motor is longer. I also had to put like a little coupler piece in between this screw right here and it actually being driven into the shaft itself. The shaft was just made out of plastic, which is fortuitous for this because I could just drill a corresponding hole, tap it with a screw, drive it down. This one being so quick is actually really nice because I don't have to go through in my editing software and just constantly speed it up. So whenever you saw the little chompy guy going earlier, that was at 6 RPM, this one's at 35. So that's really nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this here. It's just nice demonstration to show that, you know, you don't have to go out and purchase super awesome camera equipment. Now, granted, it's gonna work right out of the box. You're not gonna have to troubleshoot it, but it's nice to do it yourself sometimes. But that's all I got. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.